Clara stepped out of the cab, her breath visible in the chilly December air. The towering penthouse loomed above her, all glass and steel reflecting the twinkling city lights. She clutched the golden envelope that had arrived unexpectedly, doubting she belonged here, yet unable to resist the curiosity pulling her toward the grand entrance. A sense of anticipation mixed with anxiety fluttered in her chest, her shoes clicking softly against the polished marble as she ascended the steps, already feeling the weight of countless eyes waiting to judge. The moment she entered, a wave of warmth and laughter enveloped her. Guests in shimmering gowns and tailored suits floated through the grand hall, champagne glasses in hand, their smiles polished and practiced. Clara's modest dress felt out of place against the backdrop of glittering ornaments and sparkling chandeliers. Her eyes darted around, noticing subtle details, the intricate floral arrangements, the soft glow of candles, and the string quartet playing a gentle, festive melody. Everything seemed both inviting and intimidating. Daniel, the event organizer, appeared beside her, offering a charming smile. "Welcome, Clara," he said smoothly, handing her a flute of champagne. His presence was calming, yet it carried the faintest hint of mystery, a whisper that there was more to this night than met the eye. Clara's fingers brushed the delicate glass, her heart racing with equal parts excitement and nervousness. She nodded politely, attempting to match his composure, even as she felt completely out of her depth. As Clara moved through the crowd, snippets of conversation brushed against her ears. Discussions of art acquisitions, international travel, and corporate deals filled the air, alien to her everyday life. She overheard someone comment on Alexander Blackwood, a name she vaguely recognized from a headline but knew little about. The name sparked curiosity and a small pang of intimidation. How many of these people were accustomed to this world, she wondered, and how would she, a simple professional, navigate among them? A server approached with a tray of canapés, and Clara accepted one with a polite nod. The rich aroma of smoked salmon and truffle mingled with the scent of pine and fresh flowers, creating an intoxicating atmosphere. She moved toward a window overlooking the city skyline, the lights below twinkling like scattered stars. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, letting the grandeur wash over her while reminding herself that she belonged here tonight, if only as an observer, a guest invited into a world far removed from her own. A sudden laugh drew her attention to a group gathered near the fireplace. Crystal glasses clinked, and animated gestures punctuated conversations. Clara noticed how effortlessly the guests interacted, exchanging glances and subtle nods that carried unspoken messages. She felt like an outsider peering through a glass wall, simultaneously thrilled and self-conscious. The music shifted to a waltz, and couples began to dance gracefully across the polished floor, the scene almost cinematic, each movement precise, elegant, and slightly intimidating to her novice eyes. Daniel reappeared, offering a gentle guiding hand as he led Clara to a quieter corner. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked, his voice low enough to be intimate, yet carrying an air of intrigue. Clara smiled, unsure how to respond fully. The champagne had loosened her nerves slightly, but the enormity of the setting weighed heavily. She wanted to speak freely, to be seen beyond the superficial gaze of the room, yet words seemed trivial in this glittering arena of wealth and influence. Clara's gaze finally fell on a tall man near the staircase, commanding yet understated, his presence unmistakable. Something about him felt familiar, though she couldn't place why. She glanced at Daniel, who simply raised an eyebrow, almost teasingly, as if acknowledging her unspoken curiosity. The night stretched before her, full of uncertainty, excitement, and the subtle hum of possibilities. Little did she know, this evening would mark the beginning of an encounter that could change her life forever. Clara moved carefully among the glittering decorations, marveling at the intricate ornaments and soft glow of fairy lights. The grand Christmas tree in the center caught her eye, its branches heavy with crystal and gold. She reached out to adjust a delicate hanging ornament, her fingers brushing against a small velvet pouch lying on a nearby table. In a moment of innocent curiosity, she picked it up, examining it closely, unaware that inside rested a necklace far more valuable than anything she'd ever encountered. A sharp gasp cut through the music and chatter. Clara's heart skipped a beat as she looked up to see Victoria, a striking socialite in a ruby gown, pointing directly at her. "That's mine!" Victoria exclaimed, her voice dripping with accusation. A cluster of guests turned, their eyes narrowing and whispers spreading like wildfire. Clara froze, the velvet pouch still in her hands, panic rising like a tidal wave. Every eye in the room seemed to pierce through her, judging her, condemning her before she could explain. Clara's cheeks flushed crimson as she opened her mouth to speak, but words faltered. I think there's been a mistake," she stammered, her voice trembling. The guests leaned in, their expressions skeptical, some smirking with thinly veiled amusement. Victoria's eyes flashed with disdain, her whispers now audible to those nearby. Clara felt a mix of disbelief and humiliation, unable to comprehend how a simple curiosity had spiraled into a public spectacle. Mia, Clara's close friend who had accompanied her, stepped forward, her voice firm yet polite. "Clara didn't take anything," she said, reaching out to steady her friend. But Victoria waved her off with a flick of her hand, dismissing her attempt at intervention. The murmurs grew louder, blending with soft laughter and incredulous exclamations. Clara's stomach churned as she realized that no one was on her side, and the room seemed to close in around her like a cage of judgment. The music felt distant now, drowned out by the whispers and judgmental stares. Clara's hands shook as she held the pouch, debating whether to open it and prove her innocence. She glanced at the guests' faces, each one reflecting curiosity, suspicion, or amusement. The glittering atmosphere of the party, once enchanting, now felt suffocating. She wished for a quiet corner, a place to escape the public scrutiny, yet the crowd's attention pinned her in place like a spotlight she never wanted. Victoria's voice cut through the growing tension again. "Honestly, I can't believe this," she said, eyes narrowing, lips tight with anger. The guests around her nodded and murmured, reinforcing the false narrative. Clara tried again. "I promise I didn't take anything. Someone must have misplaced it." But her words were lost in the cascade of doubt and gossip. Every plea seemed futile as the social currents swept her along, leaving her vulnerable and exposed to the harsh judgment of the elite crowd. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes, humiliation and fear mingling into a heavy knot in her chest. Her voice caught in her throat as she attempted to regain composure, desperately searching for someone, anyone to believe her. Mia stayed close, whispering reassurances, but Clara could feel the weight of dozens of disbelieving eyes, their judgment pressing down like an invisible hand. It was a moment she would never forget, the sting of false accusation magnified by the dazzling surroundings. Just as the tension reached its peak, a hush fell over the room as Alexander Blackwood, the host, appeared at the edge of the crowd. Clara didn't yet realize who he was, but his presence alone carried authority. Conversations faltered, whispers died, and all eyes subtly shifted toward him. Clara's heart pounded, torn between hope that someone might finally see the truth and fear that the situation might worsen under the scrutiny of this mysterious, commanding figure. Alexander Blackwood moved through the crowd with effortless authority, his presence commanding attention without a word. Guests instinctively parted, whispering among themselves as he approached Clara, who felt her pulse quicken. She clutched the velvet pouch tighter, unsure whether to hand it over or defend herself verbally. The gleam of his tailored suit and the calm precision in his movements created an intimidating contrast to her trembling form, amplifying the heat rising in her cheeks. Clara's gaze met his, searching for a clue, a hint of understanding. But Alexander's expression remained unreadable. His dark eyes held a quiet intensity that made her feel exposed, as if every misstep, every hesitant gesture were magnified for judgment. She tried to summon her voice, but it felt trapped behind a wall of tension. The murmurs of the surrounding guests became a blur, their disapproving stares pressing in from all sides. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Clara finally managed, her voice shaking slightly. Her words seemed small against the weight of the room and the authority standing before her. Alexander inclined his head slightly, silently acknowledging her attempt to speak. Yet his eyes scanned the pouch and then her hands, coolly assessing, making her feel the scrutiny of someone who expected absolute honesty and precision. Victoria's smirk cut across Clara's composure, adding insult to her fear. The whispers intensified as the socialite's disapproval rippled through the crowd. Clara's chest tightened. She felt cornered, every explanation tangled in her nerves. Alexander's presence, though calm, added a new layer of pressure, his silence more authoritative than any accusation. The room seemed to shrink, the space between her and the truth feeling impossible to bridge. Desperation edged her tone as she tried again. I didn't take anything," she stammered, her words almost pleading. Alexander raised an eyebrow, tilting his head ever so slightly, signaling that he expected more than panic or excuses. Clara's stomach churned. She wanted to vanish, to escape the glittering scrutiny, but the elegance and order of the party held her fast. Every guest, from the wealthy elites to the curious onlookers, was watching, waiting for the drama to unfold. Alexander finally reached out, gesturing toward the pouch. His voice, calm but firm, carried across the silent space around them. "Let me see it," he said, and Clara's hands shook as she handed over the velvet pouch. The crowd leaned in, sensing resolution or confrontation, each whisper and glance intensifying the already suffocating atmosphere. She felt the weight of every judgmental stare, every unspoken accusation pressing down like a physical force. As Alexander examined the pouch, Clara held her breath. The air seemed to thrum with expectation, a tense pause in the midst of holiday gaiety. She caught snippets of conversations, some sympathetic, most skeptical, but none daring to interfere. The subtle power dynamics of the room became painfully clear. Every gesture, every glance carried social currency, and she, unversed in these rules, was painfully exposed. Finally, Alexander looked up from the pouch, his expression still unreadable. Clara's chest tightened with anticipation, unsure whether relief or further humiliation awaited her. The room waited, collectively holding its breath. In that moment, Clara realized the enormity of the social hierarchy surrounding her and how her modest presence had become a focal point. Every heartbeat seemed amplified as she faced the calm, unwavering scrutiny of the man who unknowingly held her fate for the evening. Alexander guided Clara to a quieter corner of the penthouse, away from the prying eyes and murmurs of the guests. The soft glow of wall sconces bathed the area in warm light, creating a private bubble amidst the chaos. Clara's hands still clutched the velvet pouch, her chest tight with lingering fear and embarrassment. She searched his expression, hoping for some hint of mercy or understanding, but Alexander remained calm, his presence both reassuring and intimidating. "Clara," he began, his voice low and steady, "there's no need for panic. The necklace was never actually missing." Her eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her face. Relief and confusion battled within her, her trembling hands finally loosening their grip. She struggled to find words, the embarrassment of the false accusation mixing with the lingering adrenaline of being publicly judged. Alexander's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with her whirlwind of emotions. He gestured gently toward the pouch, explaining how the item she had picked up was identical to the one supposedly lost. His tone carried no judgment, only clarity and an unspoken understanding. Clara felt the tension drain from her shoulders, replaced by a strange sense of vulnerability. The humiliation that had weighed so heavily on her moments ago began to transform into something entirely unexpected. A curiosity about the man who had just spared her dignity. Then Alexander's words shifted, catching Clara entirely off guard. "And Clara, I suppose I should introduce myself properly," he said with a faint smile. "I am Alexander Blackwood. I own this penthouse, this event, and everything you've seen tonight." The revelation hit her like a cold wave. Her jaw slackened, disbelief mingling with awe, as the reality of the situation slowly sank in. She had been speaking, laughing, and navigating this world all evening without realizing who he truly was. Clara's mind raced, piecing together every interaction, every subtle glance, every fleeting comment. How could she have been so oblivious? Her embarrassment returned, tinged now with a sense of wonder. The very man who had the power to humiliate her had, in fact, cleared her name before the room even knew what had happened. The irony and intensity of the moment made her heart pound in ways she hadn't anticipated. She looked around, noticing the guests still immersed in their conversations, completely unaware of the intimate revelation unfolding in their midst. The contrast between the private truth and the public scene amplified her astonishment. Alexander's composed presence and quiet authority made her feel simultaneously small and incredibly fortunate. The room's chatter became background noise to the internal storm she was experiencing. Alexander stepped closer, his tone gentle but deliberate. "I wanted you to know the truth before anyone else, Clara. I could see how anxious you were, and I thought it only fair to speak with you privately." His attention felt intense, yet comforting, a paradox she struggled to reconcile. Clara realized that in this single gesture, he had not only defended her innocence, but had also created a connection that transcended social appearances. As the realization settled, Clara took a steadying breath, attempting to compose herself. Shock and gratitude mingled with an unexpected flutter of curiosity and intrigue. The world outside continued in its festive chaos, but within this quiet corner, a new understanding had formed. Clara knew that this night, once filled with fear and humiliation, had now transformed into a moment she would never forget. A turning point that held both mystery and promise for the future. Clara finally exhaled, letting the tension of the evening slowly ebb from her shoulders. She glanced at Alexander, noting the subtle warmth in his expression, so different from the imposing figure she had seen earlier. Her embarrassment lingered, but it was now tinged with curiosity. The initial fear had faded, replaced by a fascination she could hardly name. She realized she was seeing him as more than just the billionaire host. There was depth, humor, and an unexpected gentleness hidden beneath the elegance. Alexander observed her quietly, allowing the moment to stretch without interruption. "You handled that situation remarkably well," he said softly, his tone neither condescending nor formal. Clara felt a blush rise to her cheeks, unsure whether to feel pride or mortification. The comment, meant as reassurance, stirred something unfamiliar, an acknowledgement of her presence beyond the social drama. She found herself wanting to respond honestly, without pretense, even as her nerves fluttered with each word. The hum of the party continued around them, laughter and music drifting through the air like distant echoes. Couples danced across the polished floors, glasses clinked and chatter swirled, chaos at odds with the quiet intimacy of their corner. Clara's heart raced, aware of the contrast between the public spectacle and the private conversation unfolding. In this brief isolation, she felt a strange connection forming, fragile yet undeniable, hovering on the edge of possibility. "I suppose you're curious about me now?" Alexander said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Clara's breath caught. She nodded, unable to find her voice immediately. He chuckled softly, the sound low and comforting, breaking the tension without diminishing it. The subtle humor in his tone suggested approachability, a reminder that behind the power and wealth was someone capable of understanding, perhaps even of sharing a genuine human moment amidst the grandeur. Clara found herself speaking more freely, revealing small details about her life, her work, and the odd mix of excitement and intimidation she felt upon entering the penthouse. Alexander listened intently, asking questions that were thoughtful, never intrusive. Each inquiry felt like a gentle bridge connecting two very different worlds. Clara realized she was drawn to his presence, not because of wealth or status, but because of the attention and genuine interest he offered. Time seemed to distort in that quiet corner, the chaos around them fading to background noise. Clara's embarrassment ebbed further, replaced by intrigue and a cautious warmth. She noticed the way Alexander's eyes lingered on her when she spoke, thoughtful and unhurried. The room's energy contrasted sharply with the calm between them, highlighting the uniqueness of this interaction. It was as if the outside world had paused to allow them a space for honesty and connection. A subtle tension began to build between them, delicate but persistent. Every glance, every shared smile carried unspoken possibilities. Clara felt a flutter of anticipation mingled with uncertainty, a recognition that something unexpected was taking root. It was not yet romance, but the first flicker of mutual intrigue, a seed of connection that promised deeper complexity in the chapters yet to unfold. Finally, Clara drew in a steadying breath, attempting to reconcile her emotions. Relief, embarrassment, fascination, and curiosity swirled within her, an emotional kaleidoscope she had never anticipated experiencing with someone she had just met. Alexander's calm, attentive presence provided a grounding contrast to the chaos of the party, leaving her with a lingering sense that this night, once terrifying, had now become unforgettable and transformative. The tension of the evening finally eased as Alexander subtly addressed the gathering, his voice calm yet commanding. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding," he announced, lifting Clara's hand slightly as he spoke, confirming her innocence without fanfare. The crowd murmured in surprise, some offering apologetic smiles, while others tried to mask their embarrassment for doubting her. Clara's cheeks warmed, not from shame this time, but from the relief and quiet satisfaction of having her dignity restored in front of an audience that had scrutinized her every move. Later, Alexander found Clara near the grand window, the city lights glittering beneath them like a sea of stars. He handed her a small, elegantly wrapped gift, a token of the evening's reconciliation, and perhaps something more. Their hands brushed as she accepted it, a fleeting contact charged with a subtle tension neither could ignore. They exchanged a brief, meaningful glance, a silent acknowledgement that the night had shifted their connection from mere acquaintance to something profound, a delicate spark of intrigue and possibility hovering between them. Clara stepped back, the gift in her hand and a flutter of wonder in her chest. The party continued around them, oblivious to the private resonance of the moment. Guests whispered, speculated, and tried to decode what had passed, while Clara's thoughts swirled with disbelief and excitement. She walked away with her heart racing, curiosity and anticipation mingling with gratitude. The night that began with panic and humiliation had transformed into an unforgettable turning point, a Christmas memory that promised new beginnings, unexpected connections, and the tantalizing mystery of what might come next.